Admit, if you've got $29,000 in this stock, why are you making some content about why it's not going to work out? What's going on? Why are you doing that, buddy? The reason I'm doing that, ladies and gentlemen, mainly gentlemen though, because 93.7% of you are gentlemen, as per my analytics. We got to talk about the bearish elements of this stock. I've made a lot of videos, a lot of due diligence, probably affirmed a lot of your confirmation bias for the reason you guys purchased this stock in the first place, which is awesome. It's good because we're all humans, right? We all have these hedonistic desires, for those that don't know what that word means. But a lot of you might, because a lot of you are more older, as per my analytics again. So I feel like most people know that word by the time they're older. But hedonism is the branch of philosophy where you only do things for yourself. It's like a selfish form of your happiness, right? You do things that make yourself happy. It's a hedonistic thing to try to search up content and find content that reaffirms our own biases, makes us feel good about the decisions we made, and ultimately solidifies the beliefs that we have about a particular thing that we have done, especially when it comes to money. However, it's also important to look at the counter side, the counter opinion, and the counter perspective. So I'm going to be doing videos. This is not the only video, but I'm going to be doing more videos in the future for why this stock might not pan out. Obviously, the due diligence I've done, the research I've done, I think pretty much shows to the community that I am very bullish on the stock. And, when you put your money where your mouth is, it's kind of hard not to be bullish on the stock. But there's obviously some world in which the investment doesn't work out, in which you could lose all your money, in which, you just don't make a lot of money. And we got to cover those in today's video. So 3 things we're going to talk about today, 3 reasons why Palantir stock may fail over the next 5 years. And I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. Now, while I explain each of these reasons, I'm also going to be explaining some of my counter reason towards the reason. So we're going to do a little bit of debating here with myself for these reasons to try to analyze what are the pros of the doubt that I have and the reasons that I have of it not working out. And then also what are the possibilities that it actually does work out in the first place. I did debate in high school. I was a national debating champion. If you look me up and just type in Amit Kukreja debate, you'll see I was ranked number 7 in 2016 in all of the United States. And I was the 3rd best public speaker in Europe in 2015. Not to brag or anything. So I know a little bit about debating and making arguments. It's why I've been decent at making some videos, because each video you're just making an argument at the end of the day and presenting that argument. So enough about me and my past life as a debater. 3 reasons why. I did 4, I did 5, I did 4. I messed up that finger. That was so bad. Okay, 3 reasons why Palantir may not work. Number 1 is the SPACs don't work out. So the SPAC theory, I made a video on this. I'll link it in the description. Palantir purchases a stake in special purpose acquisition companies. Those are companies that go public, not through a traditional IPO, but rather through raising money and having some key investors allocate capital within the pool of capital that merges with the special purpose acquisition company to form a public company. This is what Wejo did, which Palantir invested in, Sarcos Robotics, Babyline Health. There's a lot of different startups. Cellularity, I did a video on that, which is their bet on placentas and placenta-based cell theory. It's really cool stuff. You guys should just check it out. So Palantir is obviously taking a lot of capital they have, and instead of putting it into R&D for the products and services that they're making, they're just putting it back into the company, or these mini companies that they're investing in. There's a couple of problems for why this might not work out. Number 1, Wall Street doesn't like it. Now, regardless of if Wall Street likes it or not, it does affect the stock price, right? And Wall Street does not like that they're getting revenue from these other startups. They want to see the product that Palantir sells going into more commercial sectors and actually being able to generate revenue on its own. So in general, Wall Street doesn't like that strategy. But outside of Wall Street, if the SPACs don't play out, meaning these companies don't become mega, huge, successful companies and just, they're public, but their market caps are not growing. They're not able to extend the lifeline of the business, right? They're not able to expand, not able to innovate, not able to build, multi-billion-dollar companies, which is kind of what you're expected to do when you're public. It is all about growth when you're public. Then that money is not going to, it's not going to be good investment, right? It's going to be wasted money. It's going to be that money could have gone more into product and sales, more into marketing, more into R&D. That money could have been allocated in particularly different ways. They now have to deal with headaches as a company, because when you're investors in a company that is in public, you have to deal with that company. That company has to report to you, all those types of things. In general, it's just wasted time, energy, and expenses when you've invested in a company and that company is not panning out. They've done, I think, so far 14 different SPAC deals, and I've covered, I think, about 5 or 6 of them on this channel. I obviously have a lot more to cover that I'm going to be covering in the future. But, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So does that, now the counter argument to this is, does that kill the stock? I don't think so, right? I think over the next 5 years, even if 3 out of the 11 work out and become pretty big, that's a good thing, right? Because the return on those 3 should make up for the return on those 11. This is actually how venture capital firms invest, right? They invest in 100 startups and they want the one Instagram or the one Pinterest out of those 100 startups because it's going to return 1,000 or 5,000x in the best case scenarios, all the capital they invested in the first place. So I think that's kind of the strategy they're going for. But the other counter argument to this is they're investing in startups that are data driven and that are using the Palantir Foundry software. A lot of these equity stakes are more partnerships than they are traditional investments because they're not just picking a company to pick a company. They're picking a company that uses data as a driving mechanism to make decisions, or that collects data and helps other companies make decisions. So when Palantir integrates within those companies and their software is aligned with each other, they not only get them as a customer, they get an equity stake. And because they are betting on their overall vision that data is going to run the world, they're betting on companies that are also running their entire cultures and products via data. The bets seem to be in alignment with Palantir's core thesis. So if you believe in Palantir's core thesis, you should also have enough trust to believe that management is making the decision with these investments in companies that are rooted in that core thesis. Now, is it going to work out? We don't know. Time will tell. But that's sort of the counter argument to my own argument, which is like, it's probably a good bet. You know, it is a bet. Things are risky, but it's a decent bet. And these companies are public, right? They're not private companies anymore. They're not startups. They're like actual public companies. So, you know, you are betting on a company that is competent enough to at least go public and has to deal with the ramifications of being public. More pressure is good in this case, is what I'm saying. Number 2, they cannot break commercial or into commercial, and they have too much government spending. So this doesn't kill the company, because obviously if you have a client like the government that's going to constantly pay you, then, you know, that's good because you have revenue. The problem is it's not going to help the stock, right? If there's still 60% of revenue from the government, if they can't get that number down to like, you know, I would say 40% and flip it, right? Instead of being 60-40 gov commercial, they're 40-60 gov commercial, then it's going to be a little bit harder for them to grow, right? It's going to be a little bit harder for them to justify to Wall Street a $200-300 billion market cap, which right now it's around 35. So we're talking about 5-6x return on your money, which would be decent over the next 5-6 years, right? To be up 500%, 600%. I mean, that's a pretty decent return over the next couple of years. Wall Street's not going to give them that valuation if they can't prove that they can be in every energy company in the world, every blockchain company in the world, every healthcare company in the world, every media company in the world, right? And I've done a lot of videos on how Palantir is integrating with blockchain, crypto, healthcare, media companies, literally media companies that sell ads. Palantir is integrating with them. In fact, that's one of the SPACs they invested in. It's called Palantir, and I did a whole video on that. So the fact that they are already working with these commercial clients sets a precedent. The question becomes, is the growth rate of them working in these commercial sectors enough to justify in the next 5 years a stock price that is 5-6 times what it's worth currently? If they are so integrated within the government still in the next 5 years, and they have not been able to show that they can have tens of thousands of clients, because right now it's in the literal hundreds of commercial clients. If they're not getting into the tens of thousands with those deals being lucrative and having the same SaaS margins that they're having, then it's going to be hard, right? It's just going to be hard. And Wall Street controls the stock at the end of the day. They have the institutional capital to bring it to a higher spot, no matter how much retail investors put into it. You know, my 30,000 is not, it's not going to move the stock. So at that point, we really do need to see it going into the commercial sector. Now, do I think it's going to happen? I mean, yeah, I'm pretty bullish that it's going to happen. Like, from all the videos I've done, right, and all the research that I've done, I would have to be wrong on every single video and every single piece of research that I've done for them to not actually be able to break into these sectors. Now, sales and marketing is a big deal because they're so focused on product and they don't focus on sales that, you know, when you don't focus on sales, you don't sell things, which is why as a SaaS company, you really need to focus on sales, even if the product is phenomenal, because at the end of the day, products don't sell themselves. You could write the world's best book. If no one reads it, the book is trash. So they do have to do a better job. And I think their marketing content that they've been putting out is trying to show the better job that they're doing. In fact, I was on LinkedIn the other day. Surprise, right? LinkedIn. I'm trying to figure out content on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's interesting. Let me know if you guys have any tips on how to get some awareness on content on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is interesting. I saw a Palantir ad, right? I literally saw a Palantir ad. I'm like, wow, they're advertising on LinkedIn, right? So like they are trying to figure out sales and marketing because they've been so product focused over the past 17 years, and primarily because they've been subsidized by the US federal government over the past 17 years. That was kind of like their biggest investor, that they just didn't have to worry about it. So I think they're trying to figure that out. And I have faith and trust that Alex Karp and Peter Thiel are going to figure it out. I don't think that it's something that they can't figure out, especially if the product is that good, right? If you made the world's greatest book, you got to get a couple people to read it, and then they're going to start talking about it, and then it's going to spread, right? That's the nature of how content gets awareness, or anything gets awareness. So I do think they're going to be able to figure that out, and that's not going to be the biggest deal in the world. Third thing. Okay, this is a big one. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos. It's actually going to be a series on this channel called Software Showdown, where I show one company versus another company and sort of compare the ins and outs of those companies. But competitors, right? You got Datadog and Snowflake and a bunch of these other companies, even Amazon or Microsoft that might enter into the picture, that pretty much like do what Palantir is trying to do, and they do it at a better rate. They do it at a more sophisticated rate. They already are integrated within commercial clients at the tens of thousands, even probably hundreds of thousands at this point worldwide. So all we have to do is like upsell them on a new service and convince them that Palantir service suck, and go into it. The other competitor is companies do it themselves, right? Companies use their own internal IT departments to create what Palantir is doing, which is, again, a data analytics software at the end of the day. And those companies are able to do it themselves, save probably millions of dollars by not working with Palantir. And then Palantir doesn't really have a total addressable market at the levels of 120 billion or whatever else, or whatever it's projected to be, because companies don't need them anymore. That would be bad. Now, the reason I don't think that's going to happen is because for any competitor to actually do that, they would need about a 3-year head start, which Palantir has already had, to collect the level of data that Palantir has, and to be able to actually synthesize it and aggregate it over the next 3 years to build the product that they have. Palantir has already had that head start, right? This is why they are actually in the 0 to 1 philosophy of Peter Thiel, which I did a video on. I really recommend watching that video, because I think that video breaks down exactly what the master plan is for Palantir. It kind of makes you feel like, oh, I'm getting into something that I truly do believe is going to be, the most relevant company in 2035 or 2030, because of the philosophy that's rooted around it, which is that if you can do something that no one else can do because of the competitive advantages that you have, then it becomes near to impossible for other people to do what you're trying to do. Facebook was the first company to incorporate real identity on social media, which means it became really hard for other companies that are social networks to compete with them, because once you have your real identity on one network and you have other people that have real identities and you're connected with them, there's a social graph, then why would you use something else, right? What is the reasoning behind using something else? It would have to be incredibly more competitive in order to compete with it. And Twitter had a whole different perspective on how we approach social networking, this kind of micro blogging, which is really different than Facebook, which is why I was able to at least compete. And I don't even think Twitter's competing, because they have a market cap of 20, 30 billion, and Facebook is almost $1 trillion. So at that point, once you have that competitive advantage, it's really hard to let it go. For another data company to offer the type of service that Palantir is offering, and the Snowflakes of the world, and those, I'll talk about them, they're not offering exactly what they're offering. It's kind of similar, but not really. They would have to have a data advantage. And if you believe in the due diligence of Palantir and the machine learning and the artificial intelligence and the edge AI and the real technical components of what their software can do in terms of getting data that's siloed, bringing it to one centralized hub and making it understandable for non-technical people, then you believe that they have a competitive advantage. And if you think they have a competitive advantage, then it's harder for competitors to compete. Additionally, it's harder for companies to do their own internal things. I did a video on that. I'll leave it in the description, because for what they're doing is something that your two IT guys at a department can't figure out, right? This is actually using very intelligent software to be able to take data, make sense of it, synthesize it, and then make it readable to the average person at a company. And there's a point where you just decide to outsource things because it saves time and energy and money for the company versus try to build things on your own internally. That's the whole reason why B2B companies exist, because you don't want to spend time and waste time doing things internally when it doesn't make sense, when you're not going to do as good of a job as something like a Palantir would do. And if your competitors are using Palantir and they're getting top-notch quality software, and you have 2 guys in a basement trying to figure it out at your own company, then it just kind of doesn't make sense in terms of you to be able to compete. Ultimately, I think disruptive innovation and artificial intelligence at the highest of levels is going to win. I think these 3 concerns are threats. These are potentials that could happen, which could lead them to fail, but I don't think they're ultimately going to pan out. And I guess we'll see in the next 5 years. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Thank you guys for watching this video. Curious to hear your comments. I'll see you in the next one.